Hello all, this tutorial is for lab 10, the acid-base titration. So basically the lab starts out with the learning goals for this lab. Again, so what I've done is, yes, there is some portion to acid-base titration, but again, I wanted to make sure that whatever you learned in Chem 111 lecture, right, the concept of Bronsted-Lowry acids and bases, the concept of conjugate acids, conjugate bases, it is kind of reviewed in this lab as well. That's why if you go to questions number 7, right, 7 has about, let's say, A, B, C, D, F, G, H, I, up to I questions, right? Each of these questions, you do not need to understand this lab to answer these questions. Right? Like the question says, define Bronsted-Lowry acids and bases in your own words. This is based on your Chem 111 lecture. It talks about write down the molecular formula, draw the Lewis dot structures of two acids, and explain why they are called Bronsted-Lowry acids. Again, concept from Chem 111 lecture that you've learned in the last 2 weeks, and you might learn something more about acids and bases and titration in the next week as well, right? So again, I'm not going to go through A through I, but the part that I'm going to go through in this tutorial is how to use the Buon labs and then carry out the titration. Right? All right, so for the first thing, what is titration? All right, so basically, let's say if I give you a Kool-Aid packet. This is my fancy looking Kool-Aid packet. Right? The Kool-Aid packet contains some kind of an acid. Right? If I'm not mistaken, it is citric acid, but it doesn't matter. All right. And then if I ask you, as a chemist, can you go ahead and find out what is the concentration of acid, right, of citric acid in Kool-Aid? Then what you will use is this method called titration. Right? So think about this titration as a chemical analysis technique which helps chemists to find the concentration of an unknown solution. All right. So if you start from this, after reading through the learning goals, if you look at this paragraph, it talks about what is titration and then how is acid-base titration can be done. All right. So the second sentence, because this Buon labs simulation lab, you will be doing an acid-base titration where you'll be reacting sodium hydroxide and hydrochloric acid. All right. So if you look at the second sentence, says in an acid-base titration, this is done by delivering a titrant of known concentration into an analyte of known volume. Right. So basically, the way this works. So let me kind of talk about these two terms really quick. All right. So in titration, let's say if I was trying to figure out the concentration of citric acid in Kool-Aid, right? That means this right here, kind of apparatus, it's called burette, and you're going to see in that Buon lab as well, right? And that burette will have, let's say, some kind of a base of known concentration. So let's just say for this purpose, let's just say it was sodium hydroxide solution, right, which was about 1.0 molar. Remember that capital M stands for molarity, which means number of moles or volume of solution. All right. And then what I do is I take a beaker and I create a solution of Kool-Aid. Right. Then the terms, now I'm going to define these two terms, right? As the first paragraph that says something about into an analyte and what does titrant mean. All right. So here in this setup, my sodium hydroxide is going to be called titrant. All right. And then remember, I'm trying to figure out the concentration of citric acid in Kool-Aid, right? That means this Kool-Aid solution, or you can say concentration of citric acid in the Kool-Aid solution will be called your analyte. Right. So again, these two terms, titrant and then analyte. So it is the concentration of analyte that we are trying to figure out with the help of titration. All right, so now after that, I'm just going to follow this instruction, right? So what it says is, in this assignment, you will titrate a 0.3000 molar solution of NaOH. All right, so I'm going to draw that out. I'm going to create a new thing. All right, so that means in this reaction, what you're going to be doing is, this is going to be your sodium hydroxide solution. And it says the concentration is 0.3 followed by 3 zeros, right? 0.3000 molar NaOH, right? And then next sentence is, you'll titrate 0.300 molar solution of NaOH into 25 ml of 0.300 molar HCl. I mean, here I have 25 ml of 0.300 molar HCl. Right? Now the end goal is to kind of, remember, this is more like a titration practice lab, right? So end goal is to figure out the concentration of this based on the lab that we're going to do, all right? And then we're going to compare whatever number you got to this 0.3000 molar NaOH and how close they are, right? All right. And then it does say, although in this case, you know the concentration of both NaOH and HCl, this will give you a practice in performing a titration and calculating the concentration of the analyte, which in this case is HCl. Sorry, so you're trying to figure out the concentration of HCl, not NaOH, all right? That means what you're trying to figure out is the concentration of HCl. And then based on the lab that you do, how close are you to this number 0.300 molar is what you'll be doing. All right, so now I'm going to follow the instructions. It says start virtual chem lab. So if I start the virtual chem lab, that's what it looks like. Then it says, then select acid-base chemistry. I'm going to open this first. Oh, shit, let me cancel this first. Cancelled. No, cancel this. You still wish to exit? Okay. All right. Then I'm going to open this. Sometimes. Then it says select acid-base chemistry. I'm going to select my acid-base chemistry. Then it says select acid-base titration practice. Right. So I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to look at acid-base titration practice here. So I'm going to click on that. So when I click on that, this is what opens up. All right. Then it says click the lab book to open it. As soon as you do that, that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to click on the lab book to open it, and this is what's going to open. So I'm going to set it aside right now. Do not close this though, just set it aside, right? And then it says click the burette zoom view window to bring it to the front. So what that means is, do you see how this burette has been zoomed? So if it was not zoomed, it would look like this, right? So if I want to zoom in, I can just click on this burette. And look at that. The zoomed in version of the burette comes in, right? So if you see, what I have here is some kind of a solvent, which is at 0 ml mark. All right. Then it says the burette is filled with 0.3000 molar NaOH, right? That means this is what I drew, right? So that means the burette which I drew here is filled with 0.300 molar NaOH. That's what you see in here. Then it says the beaker has 25.00 ml of 0.300 molar HCl. This beaker right here that you see, that has the 25.00 milliliters of 0.3000 molar HCl, right? So burette right here, and then beaker right here, right? And you see two kind of instruments that are inserted in there. The one on the left, if I take it out, that's called the pH meter, all right? So basically it measures the concentration of H3O plus in the solution. And the one on the right is the conductivity meter. For this lab, you can take it out because we will not need the conductivity meter, right? Even though if you collect the data for conductivity meter, you will not need it. So we'll focus on the pH meter. All right, and then it says the pH meter is turned on and has been calibrated, so that's good. The indicator is bromo-cresol green. So what does that mean is, you see like how the color of solution of HCl is yellow? Remember, HCl by itself is colorless solution, right? But then it's yellow because we're gonna have an indicator called bromo-cresol green has been put in there. All right, so I'm gonna click on this chart. If I click on this chart, right, the indicator name was bromo-cresol green. So if I click on it, my bromo-cresol green is right here, right? And do you see how whenever the pH is about less than 4, the color is yellow for bromo-cresol green, right? And look at the pH meter value, it's at 0.90, right? So that should tell you that is why, because of the indicator that you put in there, right? It's yellow in color. That means if I add something and have the pH of the solution go up, it is going to change from yellow to about kind of grayish color around 5, and then when it reaches that 5.5 it is going to change into blue in color, right? So I hope this makes sense. Now this is the next question that I'm going to show you how to do it, right? It says perform the titration 2 times, and let me show you how to perform the titration. So the way to do it, titration, I don't need this, right? Is basically, and you can see this, right? I'm gonna first, before I do anything, I'm gonna start push the save button. Again, I repeat, you have to push the save button first. And after I do that, then I'm gonna start delivering a certain volume of NaOH. So if I want to go fast, I can make it all vertical all the way through. But if I want it to go slow, like drop wise, I can do that. But do you see how this volume of sodium hydroxide is decreasing as this is put into a beaker? All right. Something else that you should have noticed is, look at the pH value. The pH value is starting to go slightly up, right? So I'm gonna start increasing. Look at that, the pH value is slightly going to go. And again, I do not care about the conductivity, which is the red line. All right, I'm going to focus more on the blue one. What I would do for this titration is, after it reaches about, let's say, 21 ml, I'm going to start have it go dropwise. All right. And then the point where I'm going to stop is whenever this solution turns blue in color. Right now it's yellow, but the moment it turns blue in color, I'm going to change or stop delivering the sodium hydroxide. Almost there. Okay. You see how the solution turned blue, right? So that's what it means by perform the titration 2 times. So this is the first time. And if you want to do the second time, it says if you want to repeat the titration, click exit, select this problem from the workbook again, and repeat the experiment, right? But then after you finish performing the titration the first time, all right, what you're going to do is you're going to follow the instruction, and the instruction says to stop this, all right, and to get to your data, I'm going to click on my lab notebook, and then do you see there's a blue pH thing on this file? Then I'm going to click on it. Look at all this data that you have, right? And then after that, you can just follow these 2 instructions, 1 and 2. Think about the data analysis, or what are you going to do with this data, right? So you have volume, you have the pH, you have the conductivity, and again, we do not deal with conductivity in this lab. It's the volume of sodium hydroxide and the pH that we are interested in for the analysis of the lab. So if you scroll down, look at this, right? Talks about how much volume of sodium hydroxide was delivered from the burette into the beaker, and because of that, how the pH changed, right? So it looks like after I delivered 25.14 ml of sodium hydroxide, milliliters of sodium hydroxide, the color changed to bluish, right? And that's when the pH was about 10.69, right? And that's what this whole paragraph tells you to do. And then now after that, it just remember in our Chem 111 lecture, Dr. Gimri and I, we will go through some of these titration problems, right? And then the PowerPoint slide for this coming week, at least for my class, for my Chem 111 lecture class, we will go through some of the titration problems, right? And then even Alex will have some titration problem as well. And here, I'm not going to go through these titration problems here. I just want to make sure that you're comfortable running this lab and then understanding what is the burette, what kind of data you're going to collect, and what kind of data are you going to analyze is what my goal was for this lab. All right. And again, before you do the second trial, make sure you copy all this data before you exit out, right? So that way it'll be your first set of data that you can analyze, because the instruction does say perform the titration 2 times. I just performed it once. You have to do it again. All right. And after that, it asks you what volume of 0.300 molar NaOH was required. For this, if you follow this instruction, you'll be able to figure this out. And calculate the molarity of the HCl using this. And this is something that we are going to go through in our class whenever we talk about titration in our Chem 111 lecture. And this is just percent error based on the calculation you did, which will ask you what is the concentration of HCl that you found based on the titration versus you're supposed to get 0.300 molar HCl. Should have been the concentration of HCl, right? So it's asking you how much percent error was there based on this calculation, right? So that's it from number 1 to 6, right? You'll be using the Bune labs. And from 7 onwards, it's just based on your understanding of acid base and what you learned in Chem 111 lecture. All right. All right. Hopefully this tutorial is helpful. That way you are not surprised whenever you see all these kind of things, right? So whenever you open this, don't be surprised. Remember, this is just a burette, the June version of burette. This pH meter tells you what is the pH. So this is the pH meter tells you what is the pH of this solution, right? So basically how acidic or basic the solution is. And I told you for conductivity meter, don't worry about the data. We're just focused on this blue line is what we're interested in, right? All right, I'm gonna stop here. And hopefully you found this video helpful.